Welcome to Enter and Work in Confined Spaces, e-learning module. This training will help you to identify confined spaces, plan and prepare for work in confined spaces, including obtaining required permits, selecting appropriate PPE, identifying and controlling hazards, enter and work in a confined space, perform post-operational tasks. This training resource is a guide only. Follow your site procedures when performing your work. A confined space is defined as an enclosed or partially enclosed space, that is not intended primarily for human occupancy, within which there is a risk of one or more of the following. Oxygen concentration outside the safe oxygen range. A concentration of airborne contaminant that may cause impairment, loss of consciousness or asphyxiation. A concentration of flammable airborne contaminant that may cause injury from fire or explosion. Engulfment in a stored free-flowing solid or a rising level of liquid that may cause suffocation or drowning. Confined spaces must be registered and signed.
You typically work in a confined space to carry out repairs or to conduct planned or scheduled maintenance. Accessing and working in a confined space is a high-risk activity that requires careful risk management before work can begin. A work permit must be issued by an authorized person prior to work in a confined space. During the job planning process, the permit issuer, supervisor, and workers must refer to the Confined Space Register, access and apply isolation and confined space procedures, and complete the relevant equipment and safety checklists. The supervisor must also make sure that all workers entering the confined space have received confined space training and understand the requirements of the task. Workers entering a confined space must be fit for work, not affected by drugs or alcohol, and wear the appropriate PPE. If you are working in or around a confined space, always isolate and tag out any surfaces that may cause harm. Test and maintain a safe atmosphere within the confined space by using site-approved gas testing equipment, and ensure the area is well ventilated. Position a trained sentry at the entry point for the duration of the work. The sentry must maintain constant communication with the workers in the confined space. Ensure all workers sign on and off the work permit. And have emergency rescue and retrieval equipment at hand. Emergency response plans should be developed in collaboration with the emergency response team. Place warning signs and barricades at all access points. And once work is complete, make sure the confined space is secured against unauthorized entry.
As a worker, you must ensure the safety and health of yourself and others and protect the environment in which you work. Click on the buttons for information about your worker obligations. Your obligations and other essential information would have been covered during your general and site inductions. If you have not received an induction, talk to your supervisor. Before starting work, make sure you have all the necessary information and resources to do the job safely and efficiently. Click on the buttons for more information. Use your site's Hazard ID tool to identify, manage and report hazards, risks and control measures. Hazards are controlled according to a hierarchy of controls. Click on the buttons to learn more. As a work area changes because parts of the job are completed or weather conditions change, reassess the work area to ensure controls are still effective and check for any new hazards in the area. Talk to your supervisor and do a new Take 5 or JSA if necessary. Equipment must be suitable for the task and the conditions. Consult your supervisor, other experienced workers, and the equipment manufacturer manual to confirm equipment suitability. Remember, equipment can create additional risks. When handling equipment, use correct manual handling technique. Click the buttons to learn more. Hazardous chemicals are any substance that can cause harm to people, property or the environment. Hazardous chemicals include hazardous materials, dangerous goods and poisons. Transport and handling of hazardous chemicals is strictly controlled by site procedures. Site maintains a register of hazardous chemicals used on site. This register includes safety data sheets containing information on storage, transport, handling and first aid for each chemical. SDS are also kept where hazardous chemicals are stored and used. If you do not know how to access the chemical register or SDS for your area, ask your supervisor before starting work. High-risk tasks, such as working in confined spaces, require a permit to work. The permit is completed after a risk assessment of the task identifies the hazards, risks and required controls. All persons involved with the work must sign on and off the permit to show that they have read and understood the task, the risks, the controls and how the task must be completed. The permit must be displayed at the worksite throughout the task. The confined space rescue plan must be read and understood by all personnel involved with the task before starting the work. The plan will be developed by the supervisor or person in charge of the work and must include the following details. What hazards are associated with the confined space? How to contact emergency services? How will emergency services access the confined space? How will an injured person be extracted? What emergency equipment is required? Emergency equipment must be prepared and positioned just outside the confined space with the standby person before anyone enters the confined space. The standby person will also keep the confined space rescue plan so that they can immediately raise the alarm and enact the plan in an emergency. The confined space environment may be hazardous to breathe due to toxic gases, insufficient or too much oxygen, or the presence of flammable, explosive gases. Many gases are colorless, odorless and tasteless. Toxic gases include hydrogen sulfide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur, methane and carbon monoxide. A trained and authorized person will test, monitor and record the confined space atmosphere to ensure that there is a safe oxygen range 19.5% to 23.5%. Dangerous airborne contaminants are below relevant exposure limits. Flammable airborne contaminant concentration is below 5% of its lower explosive limit (LEL). Click the buttons for information on atmospheric testing. The standby person must remain just outside the confined space but be in constant communication with personnel inside the space. The standby person maintains a record of personnel in the confined space, monitors the entry and exit times of personnel in the space, initiates the emergency response if required, conducts and records details of atmospheric testing, ensures all personnel sign on and off the working in confined spaces entry permit. Click the buttons for more information about the duties of the standby person. Before entering the confined space, check that correct PPE is worn, barricading and signage is installed, isolations have been performed, ventilation is installed and activated if required. All personnel understand the emergency response procedure, and rescue equipment is close to point of entry to space. Standby person is in place. Communication methods are confirmed. Entry/exit log is signed. Open the access point. Confirm that the atmosphere is safe for entry and enter the confined space. Monitor the atmosphere throughout the work. Evacuate the space if an alarm sounds or if you feel it is unsafe. Use only approved equipment within the confined space and only do the tasks that you have been trained and authorized to do. Report problems to your work team and standby person immediately. Keep to your allocated time and exit as soon as your time is up. Report to the standby person if the task is taking longer than expected. Additional atmospheric testing or resources may be required. Maintain positive communication with the standby person throughout the work. When the job is done, or at the end of your shift, you must remove tools and equipment. Check all personnel have exited the space. Close and secure the access point to prevent unauthorized entry into the confined space. Remove locks and tags. Remove, clean and store signage and barricades if authorized. Sign off entry permit. Clean, inspect and store tools and equipment in the designated areas. Report any damaged or faulty tools and equipment according to site procedures. Dispose of, or recycle, waste materials. Perform any other general housekeeping tasks to ensure the work site is tidy and safe. Complete and submit work reports and records according to site procedures. Attend a shift handover meeting if required. There will now be a short quiz to test your understanding of this module. How would you identify a confined space? Select all that apply. Which of the following is a confined space? Select all that apply. Welding in a confined space requires only a single permit. Select true or false. SDS contain information on hazardous chemical supplies, storage, handling and first aid. Only the supervisor can access SDS. Select true or false. What are the main air contaminants or toxic gases that are detected using a gas detector? Select all that apply. Ventilation is needed to create a breathable atmosphere, maintain temperature and purge contaminants. Select true or false. Why is it important to know the characteristics and technical specifications of confined space equipment? Select all that apply. Equipment can be a hazard. The size and weight of breathing apparatus can create risks in relation to moving in a confined space and causing stress and heat-related illness. Select true or false. Everyone involved in the confined space work task must read the rescue plan and know what they must do in an emergency before starting work. Select true or false. What should you do if your gas detector sounds an alarm during confined space operations? Select all that apply. You must get 100% to pass this module. Please retry the assessment.